Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation and for organizing a fantastic event. I hope everybody's having fun. I am, and I'm learning a lot. So I wanted to tell you today about the gender gap tracker and about how we're closing or hoping to close the gender gap in the media. The Gender Gap Tracker is a co-production. So these are the producers, Informed Opinions, SFU, and my lab, the Discourse Processing Lab. This is the cast. This is the cast of people who have contributed to this production. And we have a really diverse team of software engineers, students. Mostly I work with a lot of students at SFU in the big data program, students in linguistics, in computer science. And we have, for instance, Vasundhara Gautam, who is here and was a student in our program. One of the problems of working with students is that they graduate. And then they go and get jobs doing wonderful things. But this is the group of people, including Sherry Graydon from Informed Opinions that I'll tell you about. And we have built this thing called the Gender Gap Tracker. So what is this? It's a dashboard. It's live. You can go check it out now, gendergaptracker.informedopinions.org. And what we do is we track the ratio of men and women quoted in what we call mainstream. So those Canadian news organizations. And we've been doing this. We have data starting October 1st, 2018. And this is the aggregate picture. Not pretty. So about 27% is the number of women quoted. And you can go check by outlet. CBC News often tends to do a bit better. They have more women quoted than the others, but they're certainly not at parity. And this is data for social change. That's what we're trying to do with the Gender Gap Tracker. But let me give you a little bit of background first about how this came about. It was a partnership with Informed Opinions, which is a non-profit organization based in Ottawa. Sherry Graydon is the president. And their tagline is they want to achieve gender balance in media by 2025, and they've been working on this for a while. Now that I realize this is only 5 years away, it's even more urgent. The idea is to encourage news media organizations to represent true diversity and also to encourage women to engage more with the media. So I hope you all say yes to media interviews if somebody calls you and asks for an expert opinion on something. Because sometimes we really are the best person. One frequent thing that happens with women and minority people, racialized minority people, people of color, women, we often think, I don't know, this other person may be better at this than me. Sometimes you are the best person, so yeah, that's what you have to think. And there's a partnership between Informed Opinions and my lab. As I said, my lab keeps changing, so we often have different groups of people. There's Vasundhara again, and sometimes we do remote communication. Fatemeh Jarabi Yasser was the main engineer building the Gender Gap Tracker. And I just wanted to put this picture up here today because this is the current team. They all identify as male, so it's just a bunch of really tall guys and me working right now. The team keeps changing, but there keeps being good people. I'll do the same pitch as Candace did. Always happy to work with data scientists, especially if it doesn't cost us too much money. It's, again, a nonprofit. So give me a call if you want to work on the tracker. My lab, what we do is we look at discourse from a corpus and computational point of view. So some of this is qualitative analysis. I do things like build little trees out of text, trying to understand the structure of text. This is basically natural language processing. What we have done in the past is work on sentiment analysis. So if you go to TripAdvisor, you get those star ratings, or those are often human labels. But a lot of the labels that you find on online ratings are automatically generated. So in TripAdvisor, the ratings for food, service, and value are aggregates using the text in the review. And what we're doing now is working on a few projects around news and social media text. So the first project is on managing comments. This is around trying to filter toxic comments. Again, like Candace mentioned, some of the sort of soft, violent comments that you find online. But also trying to promote comments that we know contribute to the conversation. And this is a project that we're working on with Jigsaw and a Google company. Another project looking at the language of misinformation and fake news. Nobody's partnering with us on that, but we're still doing it because we think it's really important. And this is, again, looking at language, looking at whether you can tell the language of fake news. Leaving aside distribution and who promotes fake news, but just looking at the language. And then this is the Gender Gap Tracker is the third project that I want to talk about today. So why have we done this? So Informed Opinions did a study in 2015 looking at different sections of news media, and they found women were about 29% of sources. Right, so people quoted. Newsmakers, people profiled, people interviewed. This excluded the sports section because they knew that that would make the numbers much worse. The Global Media Monitoring Project is a project conducted in a number of different OECD countries. And they've been doing this since 1995. They do a study, a qualitative study, where they go and count a sample of news articles. In 1995, the number of women profiled in news articles was 17%. In 2015, it had gone up to 24%. Looks really good. They are gearing up for this year's, for 2020 study, so we don't have the results yet. But if you continue with that rate, it would take 70 years to reach parity, to have the same number of men and women quoted in the news. So we thought, maybe we can speed that up. Why does this matter? So 3 reasons why this is important. And this, in this audience, I think I don't have to explain this so much. I think you're probably well aware of the problem. One is, if you cannot see her, you cannot become her. I was actually looking for pictures of CEOs, thinking that it was all going to be a bunch of men. But I was pleasantly surprised. I had to dig a little bit. So Google gave me quite a variety of women and people of color. Bing gave me more men. So that's what the picture that I chose. I have to tell you, this is biased data. I chose the picture that had the most men. But it's an issue, right? With, do you see yourself represented in positions of power? I have 2 daughters. About 4 years ago, 2016, for my oldest daughter, the principal of her school was a woman. The premier in her province, we live in BC, was a woman. And it looked like it was going to be a female president in the United States. And she didn't know anything different. She thought this was perfectly natural, right? Women are in positions of power. And I just thought, I want to protect that innocence. Things change very rapidly. The principal for school, both of them were great principals, but the principal became a man. We have a male premier. I won't talk about the United States. So, I see this. I see the problem in not having role models. The second reason why this matters is because we can call this is the say gap. You don't see women profiled. And this probably has an effect in the wage gap, the gender pay gap. Because if women are not seen as experts, then they're not paid as experts. Right? So we know the numbers are that, and then this is a study from Toronto. And this is again disaggregated by different ethnic profiles. But if you just put men and women against each other, there is a pay gap. And the third reason is diversity of opinion. This is a study that Informed Opinions did, where they looked at op-eds written by men and op-eds written by women, and they subtracted the words. So these are the words in op-eds written by women that do not appear in op-eds or commentaries written by men. And there are things that you can probably imagine are common. Sexual, female violence, girls, impact. But things like water, safety, disease, institutions. Right? So if we want to have a true diverse society, we need to have a true representation of the diversity of society. And I'm going to talk a lot about men and women and about a binary opposition. We are aware that there are many forms of diversity. We're measuring one because you have to start somewhere. So I want to tell you a bit about how this works. What we do is we do big data analysis. We go and download content from the websites. This is perfectly legal because it's for research purposes and we do not distribute it. We just do aggregate analysis. And we get all the metadata, the author, the date, and we get the full text. And this is where the natural language analysis comes in. We do named entity recognition with existing tools, a library called Spacey. So we identify the people that are named. And I think this is quite relevant for data scientists because a lot of the data out there and a lot of the data that we're interested in is in language form. It's unstructured data. So what we do in my lab is try to put some structure onto that data. And we do it with a combination of existing tools. There are really advanced NLP tools already, and tools that we build ourselves. So this is, like I said, it's a named entity recognition where we find, Oxfam Canada, Oxfam Quebec, and Oxfam Great Britain, and so on. And that Miss Bibot here is the same as, there's a Miss Bibot somewhere there. This is an existing tool. What we have built is a system to look for quotes. So we go through the text and we find something like this: Pope Francis II, Australian Archbishop, convicted of concealing child sex abuse. So first of all, we find that this is a quote. It goes until that said on Thursday that. And then we link it to the person who said it, Prime Minister Turnbull. We also identify, these are the easiest ones, the ones that have quotation marks around them. And then we have these things, we call them floating quotes because they have quotation marks around them, but they don't have, in the same sentence, comma said. We just link it to the person quoted immediately before. And this is NLP built with a combination of machine learning approaches to natural language processing, some rules, and again, building on a lot of existing research, this piece we produced. And this is what we show on the website. And then we extract the gender of the speaker. We have, again, acknowledging that gender is not necessarily binary, but English encodes it that way. We extract pronouns or names. We have a large list of names that we have identified. One thing we discovered recently is that Lindsey Graham, the US Senator, was being identified as a woman because Lindsey is more likely to be a female name. So we go in and correct it sometimes. And we also use online services to tag a name. There are many cases where we have unknowns. So sometimes the name is ambiguous, Alex, right? Lindsay. So we have the full name and it's a prominent person. We can manually correct that. In some cases, the person prefers to use a gender-neutral pronoun, right? So Jordan Jones, they were looking. And in some cases, the gender is not knowable. The police said they, right? It's a group. They don't have identifiable gender. And every 24 hours, this is what we do. We collect the news, articles, they do named entity recognition, assign quotes, and so on, and then we publish it on the website. That's the dashboard that I showed you. So some statistics we have we've been doing this, October 1st, 2018, actually. We've been doing it for 15 months now. We have about 600,000 articles. I've talked about English. Those are the English outlets. We are collecting data from French. We don't have a French dashboard yet. If any of you are or know French NLP experts, send them my way, because that's what we need right now. And this is the gap that we're trying to capture. It's the number of people mentioned, there's about 33% women, and even fewer of those are actually quoted. We don't hear many female voices in the news. Just so that you get an idea of who gets quoted, this is a sample of the top 10, 15, mostly politicians, a sports coach, and Meng Wanzhou, a business person. So when we talk to news outlets, we also show them this because we say, you can't control a lot of this, right? If you have to quote a politician and they happen to be mailed us what you have, what you can control is that expert opinion, right? You can approach more women, more people from diverse backgrounds. The other interesting thing with this is the raw numbers. So the top male is quoted about 10,000 times. The top female is quoted about 1,500 times. Right? So you just look at the raw numbers, it's really, the difference is quite stark. We are doing a bit more research. This is the data science piece that I don't have numbers for, but we're going to look at the difference or the relationship between authors and people quoted. Namely, are female authors more likely to quote female sources? And we know from other research it's not always a clear relationship. It's not always the case that, for instance, female bosses hire more female employees. It's a complex relationship. We want to know if there's the difference if the content is newswire or not, if it is editorial or not. The other question that we're very interested in is topics. So we are doing topic modeling, and we want to know, so bluntly, if women are always quoted in the life and arts section, and men always quoted in the finance section of the paper. We're going to look at the relationship between topics and people quoted. So to produce things like this is just a sample from a sample of the data to figure out maybe, you see that these are the main words in this topic here: million, company, price, market. You can sort of get a sense of what kind of topic that is. And maybe it's similar men and women, right? This is a sample, it's not conclusive. We're doing a lot of outreach as well. So we launched this in Ottawa. We actually had the support of Marianne Monsef, the Minister for Women and Gender Equality. That's very great, and from Informed Opinions. And that's Joy Johnson, Vice President of Research at SFU. So we've had a lot of support from organizations. Yeah, that's me hanging out with the minister. That was my minute of fame. And SFU is promoting it, and we are doing OPEDs. We are doing a lot of outreach to quantify the problem, to explain what the problem is. And it's part of a SFU campaign of doing data or using data for good. So my conclusion is that big data can help quantify that gap so that then we can do something about it. One of the things that Sherry Graydon often says is what gets measured gets done, right? So if you know what it's like, then you can say, well, has it changed or not? So stay tuned for more fine-grained analysis. And if you're an expert, and I know all of you in this room are, join the Informed Opinions Expert Database. It's a database that journalists use when they want to get an informed opinion about different topics. And there is an English version and a French version online. Thank you.